Namaste, everyone. Thank you for joining our conversation on CoHNA Dialogues. My name is Sudha Jagannathan. I'm a board member of Coalition of Hindus of North America, and we are a 3-year-old grassroots advocacy organization. We stand to represent the interests of Hindus in the United States and Canada. So we are an international organization. Today, I'm joined by my fellow colleague from CoHNA. He is Suresh Krishnamurthy. He's the executive board member. Welcome, Suresh. And we have 3 guests. And I want to say I'm proud to know these guests we have today. We have Khalid Beg from India This Week, which is a weekly YouTube channel. We have Zahack Tanveer. He's currently visiting the United States, and we're going to be joined shortly by Amna Ansari also. So let me just give an introduction to who they are. So Amna Begum Ansari and Khalid Beg co-host a weekly YouTube show called India This Week. And I do watch them very frequently because they bring up important topics that all of us should be familiar with. And they bring in a perspective of 2 ordinary Indians discussing current affairs and news surrounding India. They analyze contemporary issues from the points of view of lived experiences of common Indians like themselves, who emerge from the diverse and often conflicted and yet seamlessly intertwined background and identity. We can only say that about India in the whole world. So thank you for that. I'm going to ask all of you to please subscribe to India This Week YouTube channel. It's very important we support these strong voices and we hear from all perspectives. The next guest we have, it's my pleasure to introduce Zahack Tanveer. He is a Saudi-based non-resident Indian. He is a director, founder, and editor of Milli Chronicles, Media England. He's got a very thriving Twitter channel. I'm going to ask you all to subscribe to his Twitter channel. I listen to him and also watch what he has to say about things happening in India, things happening worldwide, and particularly he writes on Indo-Arab relations. So I'm going to be interested in hearing a few thoughts from him on that subject. His bylines appear in News 18 and First Post. So with that, let me introduce the topic. You know, a big topic trending today in the United States, in the media, in academia, is about the oppression of India's minorities, and particularly the Indian Muslim minorities. If you have watched the Genocide Watch, or United States Council on International Religious Freedom, which is USCIRF, a taxpayer-paid agency, even President Obama, he was also very concerned about the topic of Muslims and what they're facing in India. So we want to understand from the community itself, is this all true? Is there a genocide that the community is under fear of happening in India? Why does that narrative become so popular with everyone, including the lawmakers in the United States, which is very serious? So with that, I'm going to ask that question to Khalid and then Zahack, and hopefully Amanda comes on, and then Suresh, you will jump in. So Khalid, please address the question of this concern for the Indian minorities, particularly the Muslim community, and the threats of genocide or oppression that the community is facing today in India. Khalid, are you there?
Thanks, Sudha, for a warm welcome. I mean, can you hear me?
Yes.
Hello? Can you hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you.
Can you hear me? All right. Am I visible?
Yes.
Yeah. So thank you, Sudha, for a warm welcome. Just want to say that when Barack Obama is concerned about Muslims in India, it scares you, because whenever he was previously concerned about Muslims, you saw what happened to the Muslims of Syria and other places that he bombed. So I hope he's not concerned in that case, because he's destroyed Libya, Syria, and those are Muslim ordinary civilians who bore the brunt of what their military campaigns did there. It's sad that just because he had domestic political differences with, with his political opposition there, he brought in, this whole thing of, this in Indian Muslims. He's very concerned about that. And first of all, the problem is that there's so much of ignorance. And I always say this. I mean, what's minority in the context of India or anywhere? We are the second largest religious community of India, right? So we are 20 crore. 20 crore is a huge number. That's like 200 million, right? So by that virtue, if you take the third largest, which would be the Christian community, around 5 crores, and then the Sikhs around 2-3 crores. I'm just giving rough estimates. Then you have the Jains, Buddhists, and Parsis. Now that would be micro minority, right? So why this obsession just with Muslims, right? And that shows that there is some, ulterior nefarious designs to try to tap into the radical elements of that community, and who anyways since time immemorial are convinced since India's independence and even before that this is a place they cannot coexist with the Hindu community. So whatever geopolitics he has in his mind, so first of all, I mean, there is no genocide going on. I just tweeted before this when I got into the show, I just came across a news clip of one of India's most watched channels, India Today, and there was a Muslim female spokesperson, Shama Mohammed ji, who was on a panel with the Muslim spokesperson of BJP, Shehzad Poonawala ji, and they were being, there was a discussion being hosted by Rajdeep Sardesai. So, and they were, hitting out at each other as political campaigns. Now, this is not a community which is remotely under some genocide, So I can talk on and on about it. There is a tournament happening just next to US and West Indies. There's Mohammad Siraj, a rickshaw driver's son, who's reached the stars, and he's being celebrated in India. And there are millions like him, across sectors in India. So I think at the root of it, on a larger geopolitical thing, it's that the communist and the Islamist cabal in India are slowly losing relevance to the point that now they're ready to set the country on fire just to get back at power. Even the grasp on academia, internet has been a great leveling force, and political irrelevance had already set in. So now that they are main ideological opponents, which is the Sangh and BJP, they feel that they can only weaponize the radical elements and the disgruntled elements and keep on pouring that victimhood mindset into the second largest community, and then use that to kind of for a regime change. So in all these larger games, people who are tuned into it, they do understand, but you can't blame the general person when you have likes of Washington Post, New York Times, TRT, which is like the Turkish government's official mouthpiece, Qatar with Al Jazeera constantly telling you a different reality, gaslighting you on that. So I think of course, I mean, it's even laughable to suggest that there's a genocide of Muslims in India. And Muslims have been in India since 1200 years, right? They've lived with their Hindu brethren, and it's not that we've been here just for 75 odd years. And there have been, of course, tensions. There have been, of course, periods where there has been acrimony, but by and large, the communities have done well, and the destiny of the Muslim is intertwined with what the destiny is for the larger community. So I think primarily it's the communist and Islamist cabal who still want to control a particular narrative, who still want to control power outside the political realm, and on the larger things of other vested interests wanting to put India down now that it's going up in economy, taking its place in the global space. So I think all those vested interests inside and their ideological allies within the country have this tendency of gaslighting, have this tendency of victimizing, have this tendency of exaggerating a lot of things, and have these dangerous narratives. For example, the common modus operandi of any communist and Islamist who are, of course, a team is that whenever in India there is an attack where a Hindu is a perpetrator and a Muslim is his victim, automatically they have convinced huge sections of India's population which is tuned into current affairs, who are the opinion makers, that it is a communal crime no matter what. Even it could be like car smashing into another car, and they'll find that but when it's the reverse, they will never put the communal tag on it. They will do apologia, they'll justify it and all. So I think people are seeing through it. The Arundhati Roys of the world are now very irrelevant. They become a caricature of what they were. And this too, I mean, just a few more years and the more power in India gains, after that, even that noise will not. But yeah, India needs to be careful. India needs to counter this. And at the same time, it also needs to ensure that the do not get into the dehumanizing the entire minority. So it's a balance which India has to find. But I'm sure India will find that balance, because India is all about balance. So it's the only country which has all the major world faiths in it, not now, since centuries. So I think India is just doing fine, and more honest communication between the first and second largest community, and we are fine. And I'm sure we are playing our small role in ensuring that we tell people what the reality of India is. And no one is claiming here that all is hunky dory. There are never anxieties, genuine anxieties Muslims would have, or Christians would have, or even sections of Hindus would have. But we can solve it on our own. Anyone asking for foreign intervention, anyone trying to, ride on the rhetoric of Obama and all, is definitely either naive, or he's playing to a particular design where they don't want, India to go up on the big scale. 100 crore Hindus doing a genocide of 20 crore Muslims, and then there are like 5 crores this and also. It's ridiculous.
Thank you for that comment, Khalid. Let me take this opportunity to welcome Amana from joining us from London. She's also part of the same program with Khalid. I'd like to, so before I turn it over to Zahack, I'd like to kind of set a little bit of context. There seems to be a generational difference in how the Muslim community has been viewed in India between when I was growing up there in the 70s, in the 60s and 70s. And yes, I am absolutely giving away my age here. When I was growing up there in the 60s and 70s and between now. So I just wanted to set the context a little bit. So when I was growing up, I grew up in Madurai, which is a very southern town. It was interesting because I went to a Catholic missionary school, St. Mary's School in Madurai. And the Muslim community was very, very active in Madurai in multiple spheres of economy. The biggest clothing store in Madurai at the time was owned by, it was called Dressland, Honesty Stores. It was owned by Muslim community. And the sons, the heirs of the store, were some of our best friends in high school. In fact, I still remember Ashraf, Moeen, and Isa, all of whom were basically my brother and my classmates, essentially, as we were growing up. And we never really had this issue of, well, they are rich, we are poor, because yeah, we were not very wealthy. I came from a lower middle class background. We never really had that issue. And for example, the stores, many of the grocery stores were owned by Muslims. And we literally call them, in Tamil, we call them Bhai Kadai, which means the store of a brother. Bhai literally comes from the Urdu word Bhai. So we call them Bhai Kadai. They were, all the tailoring work was done by the Muslim community. A lot of grocery stores were owned. A lot of vegetable stores were owned by Muslims in Tamil Nadu. So Tamil Nadu had a very large and a very active Muslim population. And then you fast forward a little bit, I graduated from college. I was working at CMC in Calcutta. And one of my best friends was a graduate of IIT Kharagpur, Aslam Khader. And he and I worked together and throughout that period, there really was, well, we had our practice, Muslims had their practice, and there was nothing really by way of a clash that went across to say, well, you should do what I do, or I should do what you do. Fast forward to maybe, I don't know, 5, 6, 7 years earlier, and I've been visiting India on a regular basis, and there seems to have been a little bit of a subtle change. I think by and large, overall, my sense is the basic premise has not changed. People still view the large Muslim community in India as part of India. I don't think anybody is sitting there going, oh my God, these guys don't belong here. I'm sure there are some, but they are a tiny, tiny fringe minority, which you always see in some places. Because you see that in America. There's always somebody up there standing up and saying, all these immigrants, they should go home. I mean, I've been told here in the United States, go back to where you came from, right? But we can't run a country on those sentiments. So my question to Zahack is, I mean, you are now based in the Middle East. You grew up in India, and you have a lot of perspective on that. But what do you first of all, do you think something has changed over the last 30, 40 years or not? And what is your sense of, if there is a change, where is it coming from?
Thank you so much, Sureshji and Sudhaji, for inviting me to this panel. Yes, you're right. I mean, there has been happening a change in India. I have lived in India, and then I moved to Middle East like 10 years ago, and since then I've been in Middle East, and I've seen that there is a change which is happening in India. And yes, the fringe elements, they're trying to blow the things out of proportion, and the things are happening as we didn't expect it to happen. But I mean, as we were discussing about this Muslim genocide in India, the propaganda, believe me or not, I made a video a year ago in Urdu, Muslim genocide in India, haqiqat ya propaganda. So the whole propaganda, this propaganda that the Hindus will gonna kill you and there will be genocide happening in India, this was actually done firsthand by the Qatari Al Jazeera. So the Qatari Al Jazeera first published this report based on Gregory Stanton's conspiracy theory, and he gave the example of Tutsi genocide of Rwanda and said that the same thing will going to happen in India against Muslims. And soon after this report, all the nexus, from the left to the Islamist, everyone got active, and they used every platform to shove this narrative that Muslims are not safe in India. And in fact, it's the same narrative as Sureshji, you mentioned that, is this change happening for the past 40, 50 years? I don't think so. This has been happening 40, 50 years. This has been happening since 1947. It's the same narrative which was done back in 1947 to divide India and Pakistan. They did away with it. And I like to mention about Maulana Abul Kalam Azad, rahimahullah. He was the only person who confronted this idea and was very vocal against the partition. And yes, I agree that he used the religious card to stop the partition because the other side as well was using the religious card. So Maulana said that how could 100 million Muslims be killed, just like that? How could they be killed? So at that time, the Muslims in India were 100 million. And the percentage was 9%, and today Muslims in India are 15%. So where's the genocide? And what's the genocide they're talking about? And an interesting thing, Maulana Abul Kalam was slandered and accused of being Hindutva poster boy at the time. And even today, anyone who speaks against this narrative, anyone who exposes this narrative that there is no genocide in India, he will be accused immediately of being a Sanghi or paid agent of Modi or paid agent of BJP. So the main question here is, who is behind this propaganda? Who is doing this information warfare against India? Whether it's about Muslim genocide or Islamophobia, or who is actually trying to create the rifts between the communities. So in fact, we published a report in Milli Chronicle on May 5th, 2022, analysis from Muslim genocide to Islamophobia, who runs anti-India narratives. So a Chicago-based organization, Justice for All, JFA, which was founded in 1999, I think, by a Pakistani national, Abdul Malik Mujahid. So he was the former head of Jamiat-e-Talaba, the student wing of Pakistan's Jamaat-e-Islami, which is equivalent to Student Islamic Organization, SIO, in India. So Abdul Malik Mujahid, he collaborated with the Indian Jamaat-e-Islami Dr. Sheikh Ubaid, and they formed Indian American Muslim Council, IAMC, which even has the Indian leftists like Harsh Mandar and Anjana Chatterjee, Ajit Sahi, and you also have people like Ghulam Nabi Fai of Kashmiri American Council. So they have direct connections with ISI. So Disinfo Lab has done a wonderful research on these connections, and they have published this. So that's the reason. That's the reason that when this Muslim genocide in India came out in the media through Qatari Al Jazeera and Middle East Eye and Middle East Monitor and all those Islamist and Muslim Brotherhood media platforms published this report, all the Islamist imams based in US like Yasir Qadi, Omar Suleiman, and their comrades like Zakir Naik and the leftists, they all parroted the same narrative that Muslims in India will be subjected to genocide. So Muslim genocide in India is a propaganda tool. To be honest, it's a propaganda tool specifically designed to blackmail India, specifically designed to hammer India. And Khalid was mentioning about Obama's comments on India. Brinley Bruton's analysis piece was published in NBC report, and it says that during Obama's tenure, Obama dropped an average of 72 bombs every day, the equivalent of 3 an hour. So he used to bomb 3 bombs an hour every day on Muslim countries. And in the New York-based think tank Council of Foreign Relations (CFR), they mentioned that Obama dropped like 26,171 bombs on Iraq, Syria, Afghanistan, Libya, Yemen, Somalia, and Pakistan in 2016. And now they're trying to speak like holier than thou attitude, and the Islamists and the leftists in India have picked up this narrative and they started to bash the government. So it's all hogwash. It's all propaganda.
So Zahack, thank you for that update. Now I want to turn the next question over to Amana in London. Now, genocide is a very strong word. It's a word loaded with a lot of meaning. And in recent history, there have been 5 or 6 known episodes of true genocide. One of which, of course, is the Tutsi-Hutu conflict in Africa. But by far, the biggest example of genocide that we all know of is the Holocaust. That happened in Europe. So Amanaji, you're based in London. You're working off of you kind of focus a little bit on what is happening in Europe. Can you shed some context on this whole this narrative of calling something a genocide? I mean, given the digital economy in India, where everybody has a cell phone, you would think that if there was widespread genocide going on, there would be bodies strewn on the streets, and or some kind of a systematic abuse. And with everybody with cell phones, there would be nonstop TikTok videos or Instagram videos of this. So if the genocide narrative is taking hold, I don't think it is, but if it is to take hold, where is it coming from, and what is the European perspective on all of this?
First of all, thank you, Sudha and Suresh, for inviting me on CoHNA platform. So, give platform to speak my mind. So, your question about the European society and why do they believe in such a narrative that there are genocide or at least marginalization of Muslims going on. So, first of all, I would say I have just shifted here. It's been a year, so I don't have a very good understanding of it. I need more time to understand their mindset. However, I can see that there is a guilt when it comes to the European country, European nation. They have a certain past of colonization. They have a past of Holocaust. So they have so much guilt. And if anyone uses certain terminology, the intellectual world here and the political leaders, they get to a very, it just kind of bring a lot of attention only by the using those words. And because they have no understanding of India and their lenses, the way they see this world is a very Abrahamic lens. So they cannot understand the reality, the ground reality of India and a mindset, how a Hindu society works. However, as long as I give them this benefit of doubt that there is a certain kind of incapability to understand the mindset or Eastern philosophy. The same time, I do believe there are a lot of element of propaganda as well, because these people are not someone who are ignorant. They are very well read. They are very well aware about what's going on in the world, at least their intellectual class, but still they believe in this propaganda, or maybe they propagate certain idea about India due to their own interest in geopolitics. And also we have to understand that Western world is a very different kind of world where freedom of speech really gets respected. So you will I mean, on their own country, while they are struggling with the Islamist element, they give platform to speak for to them as well. Like they can also speak on, even it goes against their own interest. So when we look at the Western world, we have to understand there would be all kind of voices, but who is who are behind those voices, who are providing logistic fund and everything, that matters a lot. And we can even Western world cannot just shut them down, because if they would do that, it means if authority does that, it would be interpreted as a dictatorship or a sanction of the freedom of voice. So we should not first think that the entire Western world is looking towards the India from this certain frame where minorities are under the threat. That is also true. Also, right now, I can see specifically in UK, their approach toward the India has changed a lot due to their own interests, because they are being very thoughtful toward Indo-Pacific region. So I mean, recently Daily Mail has posted a video of a string operation where Khalistani has been doing this illegal immigration process, something like that. And the Khalistani would be giving you the opportunity, but then you have to do the propaganda of the Khalistan. And it was published in the Daily Mail, and Rishi Sunak actually tweeted about it. So we can see that Western world is also not black and white. There are different kind of thought process. There are freedom of voice, freedom of speech. However, at the same time, I think Western intellectual world do not understand the India. And when we see the speech of Obama, it clearly seems like someone has fed to him to speak on a certain narrative, and he has just spoken it, because the specifically word we see, Hindu India and Muslim India. What is that? How can India be Hindu and Muslims? And similarly, you can see when we look at our neighbors, like Pakistan, where thousands of the non-minorities, non-Muslims girls, the minority of the Pakistan, when they get abducted, raped, forcefully converted, there is no speech coming from their leaders, leaders from the Western world. So why there is no Hindu Pakistan and Muslim Pakistan? Unfortunately, there are not enough Hindu exist in Pakistan. Still, we do not listen these kind of word that there is a genocide is going on, or there is a minority are under threat in the Pakistan. We should be more focused there, given their history and everything. So I think, first of all, they do not understand India. There is a gap between Western world and India, and maybe we should also do more to reach out to them. Because when I went to the UK Parliament and I was talking to a lot of people from there, and I realized when I was explaining them the reality, the ground reality, how India functioned, they were in a kind of amusement. Oh, we had no idea about it. So the channel is not there proper. Also, geopolitics play a very big role, according to me. And about this genocide thing of minority, I mean, there is a Pew Research data, right? And this research is done by, I think, US institution. Pew Research is,
that's right.
So more than 80% Indian Muslims said that they have all the freedom to practice their religion. So what kind of narrative you are creating? You are just focusing on those a few issues, a few episodes, which which do exist in India, but these are like a few episodes. You cannot make narrative or generalized statement based on those incidents, unfortunate incidents. So when 98% Indian Muslims are themselves more than 80% saying that we are free and we can practice our religion, who are those people who are speaking on the behalf of us? So I mean, this is the first, I think this is the most accurate research which busts their narrative as well.
Yeah, I was actually, I'm glad that you brought up the Pew Research, because that's one of the broadest surveys that was done in India. Over 25,000 people were contacted, and it was a very well done research. So I was going to throw that question over to Khalid bhai. From an India perspective, for people who live in, I mean, most of our audience here in the United States, we get news about India filtered through lenses. We all have families there, but we don't visit often enough. Many of us may not visit often enough. but the ground realities in India are, for some of us who visit more often, it's pretty clear. So my question to Khalid is, the Pew Research, how do you read that Pew Research? I mean, is it reflective of the reality in India? Do you feel as a Muslim living in India, you look at your circle, you look at your friend circle, your colleagues, your employers, your day-to-day vendors who you contact, from a day-to-day life perspective, is it fair to say that there are certainly issues that are faced by communities in India? I mean, even among the Hindu community, there are issues, there are Christian communities, there are issues, and so on and so forth. But is it fair to say that none of them rise to the level of the panic or the catastrophe that people like Gregory Staunton are predicting? Is that a fair assessment?
Am I audible?
Yeah, we can hear you. It's kind of breaking up a little bit, but yes, you're audible.
All right. So, I mean, of course, like you said, that this kind of propaganda, like the Pew Research first. I'll get to the Pew Research, but before that, I just want to speak about this absurdity of a Muslim genocide. Just today, I mean, just a few hours back in India, right, in the morning, like many people across the globe would know Muharram is going on, right? And after 34 years, there was a Muharram procession in Srinagar, in Kashmir.
Wow.
Right? And it was, as a Sunni, I was very glad to see, the Shia brethren able to perform the Muharram procession. And this was possible after 34 years, a conflict which has, consumed 50,000 lives and had destroyed the state. And now, post 4 years, you're seeing normalcy returning, Now, can Shias do such a procession in any part of Pakistan, a country apparently founded for Muslims? No, right? So not only is India one of the safest places for its Sunni population, but also for Shias. And you had the Lieutenant Governor, Mr. Manoj Sinha ji himself, participate in. You had the Mayor of Kashmir, Mr. Junaid Azam Mattu, a Sunni who participated in it, and a non-Muslim who participated. Now that's India. But would you see this news make front lines in New York Times that normalcy returning to Kashmir after 34 years, the Shia minority was able to take out a procession, which they were not, because all these decades we were worried that some, mischief monger or some militant would, hurl a grenade. Now, I don't know what else does India have to do to prove to the world that it's secular, right? And I think partly it's also sad because it's just always caught up decades just trying to find that validation from the West. Ironic, the very ruling party which they say that they are ones who are they don't, the West primarily, I mean, they have their layers, but at least they would not be that harsh towards the Congress. But even they, you can see, are always trying to prove themselves that they're secular. No, need that validation. You don't need to. I mean, that's our tragedy. So wanted to speak about that. Second, the Pew Research is absolutely correct. I go for, I'm not that religious, but I go for my Friday prayers. So, I mean, my Friday prayers, whether I was that 5-year-old kid in 1990 or today, 38-year-old father of 2, it's just the same. It's just that the population, of course, like other communities, has increased, the number of mosques have increased, and everyone's practicing their religion. So much so that, if you see the bigger cities of India, the kind of prosperity amongst the Shia population, which especially in Sunni majority, countries like Pakistan and Bangladesh, there they're already always under tension, and there is this threat from the majority population radical elements. They are prosperous, and that's been my childhood, and that's even my adulthood now. So I really don't get it where this comes from, and it's a fact. It's not even like an emotional thing. I'm saying that Islam in all its glory, in all its diversity, is only found in India. All the major school of thoughts of Islam are in India. One can claim that they're in other places, but they're not to the point where they're not in conflict with each other. Here, I mean, uh,
True.
even the heretics to a point,
Yeah.
have their freedom of speech. So there has never been an instance, even during the most tense times between Hindus and Muslims. If we take, as kids of 90s post the Babri Masjid demolition, which were tough days, that too in some cities of India, and one has seen that. But even then, there has never been an assault on the basic religious rights of Muslims, the five pillars. That's not even been at the lowest stage of Hindu-Muslim relations. So, as far as religious freedom for Muslims in India goes, it's one of the best in the world, you know, at par at some of the most moderate, progressive Muslim countries in the world, which would be UAE, Turkey, now, of course, Kingdom of Saudi Arabia, doing so incredible under His Highness, Bin Salman. So, or Tunisia or Morocco. So, I would put India right up there. Even though there are 50 Muslim majority countries, I would say India is amongst the top 5, 6, Hindu majority secular country where Muslims have a great deal. Sadly, what has happened is because earlier, where as a community we lacked an education, and the mouthpiece of prominent newspapers in India were captured by Islamists and communists who fed their Islamist communist mobs on the ground, and they had these whitewashers on the top. That further used to put victimization into the minds. And I don't blame the average person beyond a point. Of course, that doesn't mean he goes scot-free for having radical thoughts in such a multi-diverse society. But I'll tell you this, like someone like me also, who's brought up in Pune, and Pune is my karma bhumi. Uh, as a kid who was very much into current affairs, but imagine me as a 17-year-old in 2002, and I just have some particular English news channels and English left-leaning publications to go by to make my impression of what happened in Gujarat riots. I had been also sold for at least 15 years that there was an absolute massacre, and the nuances of it, or how it was a riot, like even though it was tragic, but there were radicals from both sides involved in it. Or what was the truth, how did it start and all. Now how difficult is it for an ordinary person who's trying to make his ends meet, and where at that time I remember the communist ideologue who headed Times of India and now runs The Wire, which does daily anti-India propaganda, Mr. Siddharth Vadraj, would pass off all this. Even today, he's so adamant and so confident with his gaslighting. Even today, every year, he puts out on Wire shamelessly that the Godhra incident was done by the Hindus himself. He being a Hindu himself, right? But that does not matter to the communist or Islamists. Neither does the Islamists care about Muslims. Neither does the communist Mr. Vadrajan is concerned about the Hindus. For them, it's like you're living off the victim of these people and then using them as pawns to for their own benefits in their career, power, and all that. So I think it's high time that Muslims who have that bent of mind and who are in these things, that they challenge these guys intellectually. Because today, of course, they have their Twitter handles, they have their tie-ups with like Al Jazeera, then there is TRT and Washington Post and New York Times, and within you have Wire, Caravan, and all these things. The Hindu, ironic, it's named the Hindu, but it's the most rabid left-leaning
Yeah.
organization, to the point that they didn't even blink an eye that Communist Party of China last to put a full-fledged ad within it. The Hindu. I mean, that's the impunity with which they work in India.
Yeah, so let me ask you. Sorry to interrupt that, Khalid, but let me ask you one question. All three of you are active in social media, okay? And I have been kind of following along, and it looks like you're getting trolled no end every time you make a statement. So Amana ji, I think you mentioned something about Sudhamurti, and all of a sudden there's this plethora of people coming in and saying, oh my God, you don't understand Brahminical, this, that, and the other thing. And I see, Zahack, your tweets about, you tweet about what is going on. And so, and we have some research here in the United States that backs up this idea that social media contributes to real life violence. So I want to start with Zahack and then kind of go around and see what is your impression of the role that social media is playing in popularizing this narrative of Hindu-Muslim disunity everywhere, and therefore, everybody is at everybody's throats. So Zahack, let me start with you. What do you think? What do you make of this whole social media phenomena?
Yes, exactly. You're right. The social media is playing a major role in creating the divisions. You know, the problem in India right now, not only in India, I mean, the worldwide, the problem is everybody has got this Twitter account and the mobile with the camera. And you know, the issues which we see today in India, these things used to happen and will happen. I mean, India is such a large country that you cannot simply say that the things don't happen. Every country has the problems. So now what's happening today is we have a lot of unemployed youth, to be honest. We have a lot of unemployed youth, and we have gully reporters. That means in every street and corner, you have reporters who launch their own YouTube channel and Twitter accounts. And unfortunately, we see a lot of them boasting about their profile on Twitter, Lynchistan and Rapistan. And this is something which is really appalling, that, you know, who in the world will defame their own country on the social media, calling it as Lynchistan and Rapistan? This is a shameful thing which people do. And they probably do that. They probably write on social media. So, yes, the nexus, the global left nexus is so huge. It's so, you know, well oiled, that they have good backing from all across the world, because they have this globalist agenda, and they are all well connected. So anything happens anywhere in India, so these minions are picked up by the globalists, and they are backed and they're retweeted. And I mean, out of nowhere, these people become the overnight celebrities. And you know, I have seen a lot of Twitter accounts with radical thoughts. They are talking about Ghazwa Hind, and unfortunately, we see some of the movie stars following those Twitter accounts. So why? Because they have shared interest. So this is something which is happening, and this is the bitter reality of the society. And these youth who feel that everything should be spoken on social media, they need to have some kind of orientation. And in fact, I believe that the Islamic scholars and the ulama, they have to play their role, and they have to get into this. They have to guide the youth. They have to tell them that, you know, you should not be broadcasting everything you see on social media, because this will create more problem than giving the solution. You know, the hijab issue which happened in Karnataka, there was a scholar from Bangalore, Abdul Hasib Madani. He mentioned about it, and there is a video of him. He said that the issue could be resolved with mutual understanding and dialogue. It could be resolved. That's what the scholars said. It could be done. But unfortunately, some of the so-called activists, because they wanted to be activists, they wanted to be famous. So the so-called activists, they took it to the social media, they did the protest, and the things were blown out of proportion. And we see that everything came upside down. So this is the problem which we have to address. And I would like to also add a point here about the Pew Research, which you have mentioned. So Pew Research is one research, but there is another research which was done and which was published by Australia Today, that India backed the first position among different countries as the most inclusive nation for religious minorities. This was published in Feb 2023. And they said that India is on the first position, as Khalid was mentioning about the Shia and Sunni coexistence in India. He mentioned about that how freely Shias can do the Muharram in India, which is not possible in Pakistan, or which is not even possible in Afghanistan. In Pakistan, you have the problem of Sipahi Sahaba who just come with their you know, guns and weapons, and they shoot down the Shias. And the otherwise happen in Iraq and Lebanon. I mean, the Shias to kill Sunnis and the Sunnis to kill Shias. There's been happening, but in India you don't see that stuff. You don't see that stuff happening. This is something which we have to appreciate, which we have to mention. And India is not only the country where you have multiple religions. You don't find only the Hindus and Muslims and Christians and Jews. You also have various Muslim sects in India. For example, you have the Deobandi, the Barelvi, the Sufi, the Shia, the Ahl Hadith. You have Jamaat Islami, everyone you find in India, which is not possible anywhere else. And this was done by a global minority survey, and they came up with 110 countries list, and they have mentioned India to be on top of that. And India also hosts the Bohra community, and yeah, in India, you have the Wahhabi, Salafi, the Sufi, Deobandi, everyone. They freely live, they freely practice, they have their own madrasas, masjid, everything is in place, and they have no problem. So anyone who says that minorities in India are suppressed and they are made as second-class citizens, this is nothing but outright lie.
So, sorry, go ahead, Sudhaji.
No, I just want to bring up one question, because what we are talking about here, there's a question from the audience. How do we find and build bridges with Indian Muslims who realize there is an issue with this narrative? So here we are talking to all three of you, but let me tell you, the social media will be now coming after all of us, right? For promoting Amna and Zahack and Khalid. So with that happening, how do we really, reach out to more of you, because there are lots of voices rising. I come from the state of Kerala. I'm seeing Indian Muslims in Kerala speaking out just like, right? So how do we promote your voices? How do we make sure your narratives are heard? Those surveys you mentioned, we hardly hear about. Yeah.
Yeah, Sudhaji, let me tell you something really frankly. As every Muslim was influenced by the left media, even I was influenced by the left media, but I started to think, realize, and research. And after gradual research, it didn't happen overnight. So I researched, I read, and I heard, and then finally I came to a conclusion that we need to have dialogue and discussion and collaboration and coexistence. I'll tell you something really interesting. Yesterday I met a friend here in Boston. He came to see me. I mean, he's been messaging me for the past 1 month, and he said that he wanted to meet me. And he's from Mumbai. So we had this discussion on the same topic. And believe me, he was saying, like, I mean, this is what I think. This is exactly what I think. And we need to have dialogue and collaboration with the Hindus in India. We need to have coexistence with them. This is nothing. This is. I mean, the paradigm shift is happening. The things are changing, and I believe the way CoHNA annual day was done in Capitol Hill, and Sudhaji, you called me all the way to express my views. So you could even ignore me, right? You could ignore me. You could say that, why, I mean, he's a Muslim, why should I invite him to a Hindu advocacy group? But you expanded your circle. You showed your interest, and you showed this inclusiveness, right? So even I was happy, and I came all the way from Boston to Washington to attend it. So there are more Muslims like me. So when I shared that on my Twitter and Facebook and Threads and Insta, all over my social media, you'll be surprised that a lot of Muslims, they messaged me and they said that, congratulations, this was a really wonderful thing you have done. You have gone to this Hindu advocacy group, and you have shown a very good picture of that. So I believe that more Muslims are interested in talking to the Hindus, but let me also tell you, there is a gap, there is a barrier, and unfortunately the left and the communists, they're trying to create this rift, and they want this rift and this division to be alive. They want it to be there. I was watching a tweet by Rajdip Sardesai. He tweeted that you remember the case of the guy who urinated in the airplane, right? Mishra, someone Mishra. Yeah. So he said, Rajdip Sardesai said that, if had he been Khan, then the story would be different, because his Mishra, so the story is different. So I retweeted that and said that he's actually trying to feed the victimhood mentality to the Muslims. I mean, nobody thought about it, and he was trying to scratch it and say that, look, had it been Khan, the story would be different. He is Mishra, so the story is different. So he was. There are people who try to feed the victimhood mentality on purpose. I don't know who funds them. I don't know from where they get the funds and everything. They do it on purpose. They want to keep this division alive. And with this division, the polarization will happen, and obviously there are political agenda based on that. So the first thing, what Muslims, the common Muslims like me, like Amna and Khalid, what we need to do is we need to get rid of these political affiliations, the first thing. The second thing, we don't need the help of the political activists. We don't need the vulture activists whose whole agenda and whose whole career is to flame the conflict and to survive on that. We don't need, we don't need people like Rana Ayub. We don't need people like Arfa Khanum. And you'll be surprised to know that a lot of people did not know who the left was, and who Rana Ayub is, who Arfa Khanum is. And now the thought process is changing. People have started to realize that Rana Ayub is nothing but a vulture activist trying to flame the conflicts. That's it. So
that's a fascinating terminology. I think after venture capitalist, I think we should popularize this vulture activist terminology. I would go one step further and call them vulture communists, which venture capitalists and vulture communists, they're on two opposite sides of the spectrum. So there's a question that somebody has asked on the panel, but this is a personal question for me as well. How do we as individuals, right? Forget institutions, forget how CoHNA operates or how different organizations operate. How do we as individuals come together? How do we, Hindus, Muslims, Christians, Jews, whoever, who have a common vision for India? I'm an American, I live here, I'm an American, I vote American, I breathe American, but I can't forget that India is my home, right? I want nothing but the best for the country, right? Obviously, I have family there, but I want nothing but the best for the country. How do we, meaning the non-resident Indians, the citizens of the US from different communities, how do we come together? How do we approach and how do we talk to the Muslim community in the United States to build those bridges to say, look, nobody's interested in genocide, okay? This nonsense about how, you know, everybody wants to get rid of 250 million Muslims in India is just ridiculous. How would you suggest we have those conversations? Any of you?
Sureshji, Amna can add points to that. Sureshji, what I believe is we need to have an alternative Muslim platform. Okay, unfortunately, the advocacy groups of Muslims are hijacked by the Islamists, whether it's the IAMC, Indian American Muslim Council, or it's CARE, Council of American Islamic Relations, or if it is ISNA. Unfortunately, all of these are hijacked by the Islamists, and they represent, I mean, they speak as if they represent the majority. Unfortunately, they don't represent the majority. This is the thing. So what we need to have an alternate Muslim platform. For example, I was in New York and I was talking to Ellie Kohanim. She served under Trump, and she expressed the same view. She said that we need to have an alternative Muslim, moderate Muslim platform to engage with. And there was a Jewish rabbi as well with me, Rabbi Popko. He said the same thing, that yes, we need an alternative Muslim platform so that we can immediately engage with them. Something, I mean, if a government is planning something, or if the CoHNA is planning something, or any institute is planning something, then they want to have a Muslim engagement program, but they don't, unfortunately, have moderate voices or moderate platform to engage with. I'm individual. Amna is individual. Khalid is individual. But we need to have an ecosystem of moderate Muslims, irrespective of the school of thought we belong to, or the fiqh or the jurisprudence we follow. It's up to us. It's a personal thing, but we need to have an ecosystem of the conservatives, of the center right, of the people who think sanely.
Yeah. So we're going to run out of time. We have a few minutes left. So I want to have some turn it over to Amana and Khalid for some last words. Tell us how we can be part of this effort. Because one of the things, like we invited Zahack over to our advocacy day. CoHNA is more than happy to join in on, for example, if there are Muslim advocacy groups that you would like us to come to speak on, we'd be happy to come and join you. So Amana and Khalid, what can we do? What can we do to help you help build a counter narrative which speaks more to the truth of what's going on? And how can we participate in it, and how can we help you?
First, I would want to address that question of your social media. I would just give that answer in one sentence, that I believe the social media democratized the information. So earlier we had a we had a certain kind of ecosystem regulating everything, all the information, the way we will be listening the news. So social media has broken that barrier. And whatever we see on the social media, we have to understand that social media is only a medium. These element and this thought process do exist in our society, and it's better that they are speaking on the social media. So now we can better counter them, and we know how to work on the society because those voices are coming outside. This was the first. The second, how we can find a solution. I think I do strongly agree with the Zahack that we need an ecosystem. If you see the communist and Islamist ecosystem, it is a very successful ecosystem. So someone like a Rana Ayub will write and Washington Post will give the platform. Someone like Arfa Khanam will get platform with the Wire. So people like us, it's not like we suddenly cropped up. People like us, we always have been existing in India. If you will read the history, there have been people like even Hamid Dalwai, though he do consider them himself only as a cultural Muslim, but still he was an Indian Muslim. But he never got any platform in left liberal ecosystem in India. He should have got that. So we people like us always have been there, but we never got any kind of support or platform to speak up. Social media also have given platform to us. Like I have been writing on Facebook for past 8-9 years. Khalid has been writing on the Facebook for more than that. So I would say now time has come that instead of working as an individual one, we need to create an ecosystem, and that is the only solution to counter them. In fact, I would say that now I'm getting a good platform, like I write for the print. So I'm a regular columnist with them. And I'm happy about it because it is considered as a centrist platform. So a lot of Muslims youth are also reading me there. Even some of my friend told me that my video in the print, it gets circulated within the Muslim community in ghettos. So for me, that is a big success story. Like, okay, because once you speak, once idea is out there, it works as a seed. You can't unsee. Yeah, you can't unheard those voices. So we need to work more there. And it is not a one-day solution, or it won't happen in a few months. We need to have a proper strategy and a strategy for like 5 or 10 years, and we have to work on a two front. First, we have to counter this ecosystem which fill the narrativehood among the Muslims or the minority. Second, we have to work on the ground level, on the society, because there is a need of reform there as well. And we have to accept that there are various interpretation of Islam. We cannot just say that ISIS are not Muslim. They are also believing in a certain interpretation of Islam. In the same way, we moderate Muslim believe in a certain way of Islam. We do read Wahiduddin Sahab, we do read some that kind of interpretation. Until unless we will bring black and white narrative to it, no, the Islam only promote terrorism, or no, Islam has nothing to do with the terrorism, we will never find the solution. So we have to work on double front in that regard, and I think it is very much possible in India. It is possible in India.
Those are very wise words. Is that no religion is black and white. Just like Hinduism has a spectrum, so does Islam, so does Christianity, so does Judaism. They all have a spectrum of beliefs, and while the core beliefs may be similar, somewhat almost the same, the fact is there are different flavors to it. So thank you for that observation. So let me give the closing words to Khalid in India. So tell us how we can help. Tell us what are your thoughts on how we can take this process forward. I don't want to call it, I mean, it's not reconciliation per se, but take this common message forward. That is, the reality is not what is being propagated out in the West, and we need to tell that reality in a common voice. So how can we help?
Yeah, so I would get back to what I started with my initial comments of what India is, and India is balanced, right? And that's the balance which I would expect out of the quote unquote majority community, that neither are Muslims to be looked as this one chunk of 20 crore victimized people, which again in many ways is a dehumanization and is a very condescending, patronizing superiority way of looking, which is a very left-leaning, ultra-radical communist way of looking at these 20 crore poor souls who we need to be saviors of, and then you can play them the way you want to. Or neither do you need to go to the absolute ultra right and say these are 20 crore, invaders and they've been here for centuries and we've kind of suffered a lot from them. And neither do you need to get defensive from those radical Muslims who want to always guilt trip you about our situation is bad because of you Hindus. So you need to constantly engage with especially those balanced ones who might have their own biases and convictions, right? Your political ideology might not match with them, but that is the group you need to talk to, and that is the group you need to kind of promote more, because that is the real India. Like that poor rickshaw driver Hindu colleague who has a Muslim colleague, they are much more liberal and much more secular in their day-to-day lives. They celebrate each other's festivals, they are very jovial with each other. You'll only see these either very well paid arsonists on internet, or these ones who build careers on the dead bodies of both Muslims and Hindus, and then they do all these foreign trips in US and then say India is pathetic, then come back and abuse the same India in India. So I think that balance is important. As a Hindu, please neither get too defensive or yourself too much into a victimhood mode, right? Everyone's living peacefully. So I think that sense of balance, if it comes and then the conversation starts, then please feel free to indulge in the most sensitive discussions, because reconciliation will come, truth comes before reconciliation. So, but that, even those discussions can be happen. I'm a big fan of late Padma Vibhushan Maulana Wahiduddin Khan ji. He even wrote in Times of India for so many years. He even tackled something as sensitive as Ayodhya and Babri Masjid demolition, and through Islamic scriptures argued how the mosque cannot be rebuilt at that site, right? And this is someone arguing that in early 90s, right? So you can definitely, I mean, he has a huge body of work. He has millions of followers. There are people like that, There are people like Kalam and those kind of people, or even in other fields. So it's important to reach out to those people, who are ready to converse and are balanced, at least in their approach, and there is not this rhetoric of, but either side of both the thing is a problem, where suddenly there is this trend of I understand there's a civilizational resurgence going on amongst the Hindu community. I understand some argue on the left, no, it's threatening, and it's all anti-minority. Well, that's a lot of hyperbole, but that side also needs to calm down, and because suddenly now they've started behaving like Islamists, that all the problem in the world is because of one particular community. So that's what you can do as moderates from the Hindu community, that right now, because those are such popular channels, and because in the long run that doesn't help, to victimize yourself as the majority and say all our problems are because of these guys. It doesn't work that way, because ultimately majority of the communists who are anti-India are Hindus, right? And I'm talking about here the ideologues who write for newspapers, who shape opinions, who have the power of your mind, right? And they shape up with Islamists.
That's a point that is a point that Professor Salvatore Babones has made repeatedly, which is negative opinions about India are actually being generated by Indian intellectuals, and many of those intellectuals, a majority of them, if not most of them, are essentially at least call themselves Hindus if they're not actively practicing Hindus, and that's where the intellect kind of takes over, and you want to be different for the sake of being different. I know it's 6 minutes past the hour, so Sudhaji.
Yeah, just lastly, I wanted to say something. And Zahack, yesterday you had a nice video on Twitter talking about national identity. And I thought we could kind of close this on the national identity conversation. But you addressed it to the Muslims. But I would like the same, if you could summarize to Muslims and Hindus. Let me tell you, our community needs to hear that a whole lot. We are the only people who leave India, come outside and really, really tarnish India's reputation. We somehow feel very proud about that. So your talk on national identity was very, very important. And I know to the audience, we cannot answer all the questions, but I think what we are finding out here is that we need to have more conversations with Amna and Khalid and Zahack. They're also very busy people, but we'll try to have more conversation. So Zahack, if you could close with a talk on national identity and its importance, please.
Yeah, the national identity thing is something which we hardly talk about. And I believe this is one of the major reasons why the Indian Muslims, they often get this question, are you the Muslim first or the Indian first? So we usually get offended. We say that, I mean, why are you asking me that question if I'm a Muslim first or Indian first? But this is a valid question, and we have to answer this question. So in fact, you'll be surprised to know that about a year ago, I made a random video, when Taliban was given the free hand by the Biden administration. So I made a video because a lot of people were pro-Taliban, and they were talking about the victory of Taliban. So I said that we are Indians first. We have nothing to do with Taliban or Pakistan. So this is something which we have to understand, the national identity thing. The problem is, till 1926, there were empires, the Ottoman Empire and the British Empire and so many empires. So when these empires collapsed, so in 1928, a movement started, Muslim Brotherhood. So they started with this concept that, nationalism is haram in Islam. Nationalism is forbidden in Islam. We are not connected by nationalistic identities. We are connected by our faith. So based on this idea, Pakistan was created. And soon after Pakistan was created, obviously a lot of Muslims, they didn't go to Pakistan. They remained in India. But Pakistan often gets up with this idea that, we are connected as a community. We are Pakistanis, you're Indians. That's a secondary identity. Our first identity is our Muslim identity. And this is something which we have to target, and which we have to, collapse, that no, we are Indians first. I mean, nationality wise, we are Indians first. And yes, religion is something which is private. I'm a Muslim. If somebody is a Hindu, somebody is a Christian, somebody is a Jew, it's a private thing. A religion is a private thing. And national identity is the identity by which I'm known. In fact, when I go to Saudi Arabia, if a policeman stops me at the checkpoint, he checks my iqama and he says that, oh, Hindi. So he doesn't call me Muslim. He says that I'm a Hindi. Yes, he knows that I'm a Hindi. He doesn't, this thing of national identity is very common amongst the Arabs, especially the Saudis, Emiratis, Bahrainis, Egyptians. They understand this concept. And I'll tell you something, that if you're nationalistic and if you're loyal to your country, the Arab Muslims, they respect you. They give you additional respect because you're loyal to your country. And if you ditch your country, if you backbite your country, if you slander your country in front of them and say that I love you because you're Arab and you're Muslim, they don't give you the same respect back. They understand that you're trying to play with them. So this is something which everyone, like Hindu, Muslim, we have to understand this, that we are first loyal to the country we belong to, and we have to work for that country, the name of that country. And I'm really happy that I'm not trying to flatter you, or I'm not backed by BJP or something. But after 2014, especially after PM Modi came into power, the view by which the Indians were looked upon, the thing has changed. That shift has happened. Like Amana was mentioning, like in UK, it's happening in US and in Saudi and UAE. This shift has taken place. The Indians are not looked the same way as they were looked before. So yes, this is because of the efforts made by the nationalist people, and we have to join the same league, irrespective of the political party.
Thank you, Zahack, for that. I think that's very important what you pointed out, because in the US, we had people like that. For example, Ronald Reagan stepped up and created this whole national identity. Now, he had a lot of other flaws, but for one thing, he brought, I think that something similar happened in India, even before Modi necessarily. I always felt that Abdul Kalam was the one who brought this whole idea of national identity to the fore, because he spoke relentlessly of being dedicated to the idea of India as a nation. And I'm a big fan. I mean, obviously, the fact that he's coming from Tamil Nadu means a lot to me. But I'm a huge fan of what he did, both in the space program as well as later on as a president. And I think it's really important for us to identify. Now, I have absolutely no hesitation in identifying myself as an American. That is my national identity, but I also have a cultural identity in that I have 5,000 years of history behind me, that a culture and history behind me that I'm really proud of. So yeah, I think both can coexist. They can work well together. The fact is, you can be an Indian and a Muslim. You can have a cultural identity as a Muslim and a national identity as an Indian. There's absolutely nothing that prevents you from doing that. I can have a cultural identity as a Hindu and an American, which is what we try and do in CoHNA. So on that note, we really appreciate all of your time. We thank you for your time. We thank you for your comments. And like you said, this is just the beginning of a conversation. We need to have more of this. And we will be happy to join in on any of the programs that you might be conducting along these same lines, because I think the dialogue, to stay true to the CoHNA Dialogues concept, we need to continue this dialogue in a frame of mutual respect. We need to continue this from a frame of making sure that our goals are essentially the same, which is the well-being benefit of a nation like India with its 1.2 billion people, 1.3 billion people who are all looking at the same future, right? I mean, they share that future, they have the same hopes and dreams, and we literally need to come together for that. So with that, I'd really like to thank you all for your attendance today. I'd like to thank the people who joined us. This video we'll make this available as a YouTube video at some point soon, I hope. So Sudhaji, last thoughts and we can close.
Thank you. I mean, thank you all for speaking out, for standing as, proud Indians. And I'm going to be sharing this with lawmakers and people, because if we don't let them know these are the voices of modern India, they'll continue to propagate what they hear, because they get talking points, right, from everybody. So this is how we share our talking points with them. Thank you all for being fearless about your perspectives. And we look forward to continuing the conversation. Thank you.
And Khalid bhai, especially thanks to you. It's almost midnight where you are. So we really, really thank you for joining us now. Appreciate it.
Thank you, Suresh. Thank you, Suresh.
All right.
Thank you so much. Thank you. Take care. Bye.
Bye.